Welcome to lecture 12. We are discussing chemical kinetics, and we were specifically looking at oxidation of higher paraffins. And when we discussed other mechanisms, for example, oxidation of oxidation of carbon monoxide, then nitrogen oxide formation mechanism, then we wrote mechanisms. We wrote list of reactions. We also looked at H2O2 reaction. We listed reactions, but when it comes to oxidation of higher paraffins, we will not list all the reactions because that will be too overwhelming. There are just too many reactions. So we are not doing that. Instead of that, we are looking at overall steps, some broad steps, and we started doing that in the last class. So let's go to this here, and we are talking about oxidation of CnH2n plus 2, and CnH2n plus 2, these are called paraffins. N is greater than 2, so we are talking about oxidation of higher paraffins, not n equal to 1, not n equal to 2, but n larger than 2. And we saw last time that the first step is typically the breakage of CC bond. So that is C3H8. If C3H8 is the higher paraffin that we are talking about, which is propane, so n equal to 3, then C3H8 has a collision with M, and then it breaks into C2H5 and CH3. M is again the third body. That was the first step, so that's how the reaction got started. Then we have hydrogen atom abstraction reaction, which is step 2, where C2H5 or CH3 will react with M. So this is again collision, and then that will give us C2H4 in one case and CH2 in the other case. So these are typical reactions, and after we got that, we understand that we already got H radical. So once we have H radical can react with O2 molecule to give you O and OH, and there can be other reactions also. So note that I am writing EG, that means these are just examples. So this sort of reaction will build up the radical pool. So we got some radicals here. We had discussed all this in the last class. Then we go to the subsequent steps. So till step 3 we had developed the radical pool, and in step 4 we see that the fuel molecule is attacked by these radicals. So what are these radicals? These can be OH, this can be H, this can be O. Radicals are more active, right? They have dangling bonds, they have unpaired electrons, so they attack species like propane more readily. So this is the fuel C3H8. Now you might say that C3H8 already broke, isn't it? C3H8 had already broken in the first step to give you C2H5 and CH3. So why am I writing C3H8 again? Is that a valid question? Yes. So there are lots of CH3 molecules around, and then there's lots of C3H8 molecules around. So C3H8 can be still there. I mean, there are lots of C3H8 molecules still there which have not broken in the first step. So now C3H8 is attacked by, let's say, OH or H or O to give you C3H7 and a few other things like water and H2 and OH. Then we get H atom abstraction again. So that was step 5, and I think we stopped at step 5 in the last class. So that H atom abstraction happens like this: C3H7 plus M is C3H6 plus H plus M. Okay. I stopped this because of the disturbance. I think you were saying that it's disturbing you, right? It's disturbing me also. So I stopped the recording, and hopefully they will come and we will ask them to stop. Is it becoming difficult to concentrate? Yeah. हाँ हाँ वो पीछे वो आवाज़ कर रहा है ना, हाँ आवाज़, तो हम कर नहीं पा रहे ठीक से, हाँ हाँ. Anyway, up to this was repetition anyway. And most of the time you are being able to write in the class itself, I'm sure. So there's another problem. This screen is not working, so I'm not being able to see. ये भी काम नहीं कर रहा है पीछे. हाँ. So some of you have class at 12. So this lecture will be slightly shorter. Anyway, so this you understood, no? This we discussed last time, that okay, this is an unpaired electron here, this is an unpaired electron here. These are two different kinds of radicals, and हाँ मैं signal. Okay, so this, the bonds around this will not break. The bonds one step removed from the radical site will break. So that's why it either breaks here, or in this case it breaks here. Okay, this is not so important. We don't need to be experts on all this. But this is the beta scission rule, that it gets broken one step away from the radical site. All right, so we'll go back to now the recording of the lecture. So we'll go to step 6 now. Okay. Yes, so step 6 is oxidation of the olefins. So olefins are like C3H6, for example. So C3H6 gets oxidized by this O atom to give you these products. This one is formyl radical and this one is formaldehyde. So where did C3H6 come from? Oh, it came from the previous steps. C3H6, for example, was formed in step 5 from C3H7. So there was a C3H7 which got formed from C3H8, and from C3H7 the hydrogen atom got abstracted. So we got C3H6, and this C3H6 is now attacked by O atom to give you C2H5 or maybe C2H4, along with maybe formyl radical in the first case and formaldehyde in the second case. Okay. Now after that there is step 7, in which we have CH3, H2CO and CH2, all these getting oxidized in the presence of oxygen atom and various other radicals. So oxidation of all these will produce CO. So H2CO, for example, was produced in step 6. CH2 was produced in one of the previous steps. CH2 was produced in, for example, step 2. Okay. And we have also seen CH3 getting produced. So, all these will give CO, and then the CO gets oxidized. So, why do I call it a wet CO oxidation? Because dry CO oxidation is not good enough. So, wet CO oxidation is fast, and wet CO oxidation will happen because there are a lot of hydrogen containing species including moisture, and this is effective. So, what this tells you is that first we studied CO oxidation some time back, and now we are studying higher paraffin oxidation. So, we see that CO oxidation is actually a subset of the paraffin oxidation. That is, when you burn a hydrocarbon, you are also actually effectively burning CO. So, CO is also burning, CO is getting oxidized. So, this wet CO oxidation must be through that key reaction of CO plus OH, right. So, that happens. So, this is the overall sequence, the important steps in paraffin oxidation. In the book, in Stephen Turns's book, you will see that there is a scheme on methane oxidation. Now, methane oxidation is a little different from this one, but we are not going to discuss this. I think you just have a look at methane oxidation in the book and just look at the set of reactions. What he does is he also categorizes sets of reactions in terms of various things, that this category of reaction, that category of reaction. Just have a look. We are not going into that in any kind of detail, but you nevertheless should have a look at that. And when it comes to hydrocarbon combustion, apart from the CO oxidation, there is also NO formation reactions, which is part of the mechanism. So, NO formation reactions can also be seen in the methane oxidation mechanism, which you can see in the book. Okay. So, that part is more of an exposure thing, which I am leaving for you to do. Now, we have done some level of chemical kinetics discussion, and we have seen complications, but sometimes we do not work with such complications, and we work with things which are easier. So, we work with, for example, global and quasi-global mechanisms. So, if you have CXHY, for example, CXHY, that is a hydrocarbon, right. So, we are very much interested in hydrocarbons. So, CXHY burns with some oxygen and gives you CO2 and H2O, let us say, and we can get a direct expression for DDT of CXHY. DDT of CXHY is the rate of consumption of that hydrocarbon. So, if you are talking about propane, or if you are talking about octane, whatever it is, DDT of that concentration of that specific hydrocarbon, which is the fuel. So, that can be given in terms of all this. Now, this has got the pre-exponential factor, this has got the activation energy also, as you can see, and this has got concentrations of the hydrocarbon and oxygen raised to the power m here and n here, and these are available in Stephen Turns's book, table 5.1. So, this is from the second edition book. I think in third edition book also it is the same number. Now, what is this? Just now we saw that if you have, for example, a hydrocarbon like a higher paraffin, then there are so many reactions. In fact, we did not even write the reactions, we wrote just some of the reactions and broad overall steps. So, how does this relate to what we are just now finished doing? So, what is this? This is single step, but I have been telling you that reactions do not happen in single step. So, what is this?
They have done and finally found this expression. So that's why they have used the kg, that's a global. They have given a global view.
Yes.
Not considering the individual reaction rate.
Yeah, so there is a kg. So kg means a global reaction rate constant. So this reaction, of course, does not happen directly. It's not like CXHY directly reacts with O2 to give you CO2 and H2. It doesn't happen that way. I have been telling you this for a long time now. So what is this then? This is just okay. This is a summary of some experimental results and data fitting. So, people have done experiments with hydrocarbons burning in with oxygen, and they have measured concentration of CXHY, measured concentration of O2, and they have plotted the rate of consumption of that hydrocarbon with the concentrations of the hydrocarbon and oxygen, and produce some kind of a data fit, okay, according to the scheme which you see here. There is a pre-exponential factor, activation energy, then concentration of fuel raised to the power m, concentration of oxygen raised to the power n. So, if you do this kind of a data fit, if you do it properly, then you get some A, some E, then m and n. These are, of course, you can understand, these are of course artificial. And what I advise you to do is after the class, look up this table and see what kind of values you have for various hydrocarbons. For example, if it is ethane or it is propane or it is methane or whatever it is of the CXHY form, see what A is, what E is, what M is, what N is. You will notice, for example, that M and N are fractional, okay, and A and D have some values which are listed in the table. You should convince yourself that the units are correct, first of all, from what you see in the table, and secondly, appreciate also the fact that M and N are this fractional numbers, or maybe 1 point something, okay. It is less, maybe less than 1, maybe more than 1, but fractional numbers, not like 1 or 2. Okay. Typically, M plus N will be between 1.5 and 2, M plus N. Okay. But these numbers can be like 1.65, 0.3, 0.1, whatever. So, these numbers have come because of data fitting. They are not really reaction orders in that sense. Now, if this is artificial, why do you want to use this instead of the detailed mechanism? Simple. If you want a detailed mechanism, then there are hundreds of reactions, and we find it difficult to deal with. We know that there are hundreds of reactions. If you need a good deal of accuracy, if you need to understand the combustion process very well, then we will use detailed mechanism with all those hundreds of reactions. But if you want to do a shortcut, but still get some reasonable results, then we will use the single step reaction mechanism. And especially you can think of a computer code which tries to get velocities, temperatures and various things using conservation equations. Now, it will also require combustion chemistry, it will also require chemical kinetics. So, if there is a flame problem, then you need to solve for momentum, you need to solve for energy, you need to solve for species equations, right. And you can well imagine that the energy equations and the species equations, they will have some reaction rate term, correct. The energy balance will depend on the reaction rate term, because reactions will lead to release in the release of thermal energy. Chemical energy of the fuel gets released in the form of thermal energy. So, that will feature in the energy equation. Species equations. What are species equations? Species equations are mass conservation equations for individual species. So, we have mass conservation equations in fluid mechanics, heat transfer, but that is an overall mass balance, but that is not in species wise, because we are talking about, usually we are talking about one species, and even if there are multiple species, they are not reacting in a typical situation, in a typical fluid mechanics or heat transfer situation. Species are not reacting with one another and changing into new species. Okay. So, there you do not usually deal with species equations quite often. So, you write momentum equation, energy equation and all that, but here you have to write species equation also, because your methane is getting consumed, your O2 is getting consumed, maybe CO2 is getting produced, water vapor is getting produced, something else is getting produced too, maybe lots of minor species are getting produced. Whatever it is, you need a chemical reaction term which will tell you which species is getting consumed and which species is getting produced. It will also tell you in the energy equation how much energy is getting released depending on the reaction rate that you have. So, you need to put in something about the rate of chemical reaction, otherwise combustion problem is not complete. And moment you try to do that with a very detailed mechanism with hundreds of reactions, things start becoming complicated. and if you are thinking of a computer solution, even then, even for a simple flame, a computer solution with full chemical kinetics of hundreds of reactions built into it is often complicated and takes several days, a lot of computational time. So, to avoid that sometimes, especially when we do not mind a poorer accuracy, we want some overall sense of what is happening, then we use a single step reaction. So, this is what you see here, this is a single step reaction. Yeah.
Apart from the particular fuel, what will M and N depend on? Will it depend on factors like pressure or something like that?
M and N will be M and N will be actually dependent on the conditions that you have, but these are fitted with respect to some conditions. So, they are typically valid over a wide range. Okay. So, that was single step, and you also have multi-step quasi global mechanism. Again, there is no real need for you to write all this, because if you write all this, then you will lose time. Now, just to give you a scheme of things, let us look at the chemical reactions here. So, these are proposed chemical reactions. Again, actual reactions do not exactly happen in this way, but suppose there is a CnH2n plus 2. So, we propose that CnH2n plus 2 breaks into n by 2 C2H4 and H2, and then that C2H4 which got formed reacts with O2 to give you carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and then the carbon monoxide and hydrogen get oxidized. So, things do not exactly happen this way, isn't it? I mean, when we had CO getting produced from CnH2n plus 2 reaction, we talked about paraffin reaction, higher paraffin reactions just a few minutes back, beginning of this class. We saw somewhere that CO does get produced and that CO gets oxidized. But does the CO get produced like this, like the second reaction here? No, it does not get produced like that. Not exactly, but this is a sort of an artificial description of what is happening. But people have done that, and the idea here is that if you make this multi-step reaction scheme, at least you hope that if you do it correctly, it will be better than the single step reaction scheme. Okay. So, you do this, and then you write certain rates. Again, please do not write all this, available in the book. So, yeah, this is the, I am showing you these just to tell you that this sort of reactions are used. So, I am telling you that ddt of Cn, concentration of CnH2n plus 2, that has an expression. Do not bother about the exact expression here. ddt of C2H4, there is an expression. ddt of CO, there is an expression. ddt of H2, there is an expression. Okay. So, all these expressions depend on the right hand side, temperature and also various concentrations. And in some cases, it depends, the expression also depends on the equivalence ratio. So, there is a phi here, but all this is a matter of detail, and you can look this up. This discussion is there in Stephen Turns's book, and the data pertaining to various exponents, for example, A, B, C, etc., and the x which you see here, these are all available in table 5.2 of Turns. So, treat this as information which you can look up, okay. And we can use these little later in the course. Now, the point is that in the course here, we will often try to just get by with this sort of an approach, even though we know that this is not very accurate. But for the purposes of a lecture, for the purposes of this course, single step will be sort of okay, not very good, but okay. If you want better accuracy, if you are doing research, if you are doing a project, of course, this is not very good, this is not recommended. But for the course, quite often we will do this. Now, we are doing oxidation of higher paraffins, and I think we have discussed everything there, all those 8 steps. And with this, we come to a close of the discussion of the fundamentals pertaining to combustion. Of course, fundamentals will always keep building, but the certain basic structure we needed in the course, based on which we could start discussing actual systems. So, I said at the beginning of the semester that combustion is complicated, it is interdisciplinary, it has got thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, heat transfer, mass transfer. Mass transfer is something which you did not study in a great deal of detail, but it involves mass transfer, because in combustion we are talking about various species, and species concentrations cannot be uniform all across. So, there is concentration difference. So, oxygen will move from one place to another, methane will move from another place to another, OH radicals will move from one place to another, all these things will keep happening, right. Mass transfer will happen by means of diffusion and convection, just as heat transfer happens. So, fluid mechanics, thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, heat transfer, mass transfer, and chemical kinetics. We had to know all these things to some extent. We could not discuss fluid mechanics and thermodynamics and heat transfer in this course, not desirable either, because these are discussed in some other courses. Mass transfer has been discussed to some extent in your convective heat and mass transfer course. So, you know something about mass transfer. Chemical kinetics you studied probably only at the undergraduate level, long time back. So, we spent more time on chemical kinetics, understanding chemical reactions. Now, we are sort of ready. We are ready to go ahead and try to understand some combustion systems. So, now we are getting a little more applied. We have built some fundamentals, and when we are doing this, we will start with again the simplest possible example. We will not directly go to a flame, we will go to some reactors which are easier to analyze. So, we will talk about first constant pressure, fixed mass reactor. It is actually quite simple, and this we are doing just to see how to write combustion equations, how to analyze combustion systems. So, to get constant pressure, it is often a good idea to think about it in this terms, that you have a piston cylinder arrangement, and this is the piston with some weight on it. That is it. This is if you have some fuel air mixture here, then this will give you constant pressure. Okay. Who decides the pressure on the system? The weight of the piston and the additional weight that you kept on it. So, this pressure will not change unless you put some more weight on it, and the other way of changing it is maybe if you drill a hole here, drill a hole in the piston, and then push a pin into the piston, okay, and then after that if it starts reacting, then the pressure will increase, because once you have used the pin to fix the piston, it has become a constant volume system, okay, then the pressure will change. But otherwise in this one the piston will float, it will go up or down to accommodate expansion of gases. So, it will give you a constant pressure, right, that is the idea. Now, what are we interested in? So, we have this fuel and air mixture here, and if the conditions are right, then these will react and the fuel will burn and something will happen, right. So, we are interested in seeing what happens to temperature, okay, what happens to species concentrations. What are the species? Well, it will have a fuel species, it will have oxidizer, it will have some products, right. All these species concentrations we are interested in, and we are also interested in volume. We are not really interested in pressure, but pressure is something which is known for us. So, we have the value. Now, we are interested in temperature as a function of time. Okay. But shouldn't temperature also change from one place to another? Yeah, so actually we are talking about temperature as a function of a spatial variable and time, strictly speaking. Because if there is reaction taking place here, maybe the temperature here is higher than the temperature there or something. Okay, there is some variation, spatial variation of temperature. So if you are strict about it, temperature will change with a position vector. It will go from one place to the another, temperature will change, and it will change with time. Why should it change with time?
As the reaction progresses,
Yeah, so we have fuel and air, they are reacting, they are progressively fuel and oxidizer are coming in contact with one another and reacting and releasing heat. That should be changing the temperature of the system. So temperature should be a function of time. So we understand this, that it will be a function of the spatial variable and it will also be a function of time. But we are trying to do the simplest possible combustion problem now, because we have just developed our fundamentals in combustion. Okay, we are still testing our knowledge with respect to simpler problems. So here we will not even take this, we will say that temperature is only a function of time. When will that happen? If the reaction takes place uniformly everywhere, if fuel and air are very well mixed everywhere and the reaction takes place with the same intensity everywhere, then that will happen. It will not happen if there is a flame propagation. So when I tell you about flame propagation, you must be thinking about all those other pictures I had drawn previously. Spark ignition engine, imagine the engine cylinder, then you have the piston, and you have this plug, spark plug, which gives a spark, and then you have the flame which keeps propagating. So if a flame propagates, temperature cannot be uniform everywhere, isn't it? So if you have a spark ignition engine, you will not assume temperature is the same everywhere. So there was a reaction taking place there. We didn't assume temperature to be uniform. In fact, if you remember, we were discussing NOx formation, and we made a distinction between the burnt gas temperature and the unburnt gas temperature. In fact, just to remind you, just to recollect what we were doing last time, we looked at the first packet of unburnt mixture to burn, we called it x equal to 0, and the last packet of unburnt mixture to burn, we called it x equal to 1, and we saw that, okay, for example, the last one was the unburnt gas temperature history till the end, and then finally it burned and the temperature changed. So unburnt gas temperature and burnt gas temperature, of course we cannot ever take them to be equal if there is flame propagation taking place. At the flame there is some temperature, behind the flame there is some other temperature, ahead of the flame you get the cooler fluid. So what we are talking about here is definitely not flame propagation. So we are saying that the reaction is taking place uniformly with the same kind of intensity everywhere. So there is no distinction between here and here. That is how temperature is only a function of time. Why are we doing this? Because we want to solve an easier problem.
temperature should be also a function of volume.
Temperature is a function of volume in the sense that volume changes as a function of time.
So volume will change.
Volume changes as a function of time. So if you say temperature is a function of time, then with time volume is changing and temperature is also changing. So you can relate temperature to volume if you want that way. Okay, but we of course will not like to write in terms of volume. So we wanted to write in terms of the spatial coordinate and time, and in order to make things simpler, we made this assumption that it's all uniform reaction everywhere. So it's not a function of the spatial coordinate, it's only a function of time. So we do the same thing here. So all these concentrations will also be a function of time, and the volume also will be a function of time. Okay, what else is changing? Is there anything else changing? Pressure is not changing. Can I think of anything else that is changing?
So whether we have assumed that enclosure is insulated or something like that?
No. No, we are not assuming that. So there can be a q dot. I have drawn it with an arrow towards the control volume, but it can be away from the control volume also. Okay, what else is changing? Is there anything else which is changing? The reaction rate, for example, is changing, but we don't need to write that explicitly in our list of things, because the reaction rate after all is dependent on temperature and the concentrations. So if you take care of, if you know temperature variation with time, if you know the concentration variation with time, then you can construct and get the reaction rate as a function of time. Okay. Now let us look at this. We understand that it will be interesting for us to get all this, because if we get all this, then we will be able to say how this system is evolving as a function of time. This is temporal evolution of the system. With time, how things unfold, how things change. So it will be nice to get this, but let us see how many variables are these? 3? No, with time is an independent variable, but this is 3 variables. Yeah, so it's not 3, because you don't know, this is xi, the concentration of the ith species, and the number of species typically you write it up to n maybe, okay, depending on how many species you are considering. The species, number of species that you are considering will depend on the chemical model that you are assuming. If you take a single step model, if you just say that fuel reacts with oxidizer to give you products, if you say something like this, then there are only 3 species. Can you go less than 3? No, it will not be less than 3. So when you said we get only 3 variables, you are being extremely optimistic. So it will, the minimum that you can get by with is 5. So that's unfortunate in the sense that you have to do more work. If it was 3 as you were hoping, it would have been easier. Anyway, so it can be 3, number of species concentrations can be 3, or it can be more than 3. It can be much more than 3, depending on the number of species that you assume. If you take a detailed chemical model, lots of reactions, lots of species, then this n can be of the order of 50 or 100 or something, and then the number of reactions, number of equations, the number of unknowns, let us say we are talking about unknowns, the number of unknowns will actually go up quite a bit. So if this is 100 xi species, then this is 100 plus 1 plus 1, 102, right? Okay, but nevertheless we will have to get these. Otherwise we will not know how the system changes with time. Now to get all these, to get the unknowns, of course you need same number of equations, and who is going to give you these equations? So you can see that we often will of course fall back on thermodynamics, for example. So we can do energy conservation, right? That is one thing. So that will give you some equation, and maybe you have to do some species conservation, some species equation, because there are so many species. Minimum species can be 3, as I said, fuel oxidizer products in a very simplified sense. Fuel in the simplest possible case, fuel and oxidizer react in one step, giving you just something which we call products. That's all. That's the simplest thing that we can do. Even then you need 3 species equations. You need species equations, you need energy conservation, and you also, since we are talking about gases, obviously we can bring in ideal gas law. So, our purpose is to put all these together to have a good number of equations, good meaning same as the number of unknowns that we have, and then solve, right. To solve and get all these, to solve and get all these as a function of time, apart from equations, what else do you need? Apart from equations, you need initial conditions, and the initial conditions are not going to be difficult because that is in your hands, and you have set it up. There is some gas, some reactants which you have taken. So, you know the initial concentrations of species, and you this is at some pressure, okay, and at that pressure for this kind of system, you know the initial volume, you know the initial temperature, and then once they start reacting, you use these initial conditions, this information about the initial system that you have, to get all these as functions of time. Okay. So, let us start with the equations. We have a few minutes left today. So, let us see how much we can do. We may not be able to complete today. Now, going back to the system that we have, we can write first law like this. Let us write this as a q dot. Okay, what is the work done? Here the convention that we are using here in writing this first law expression for a system of fixed mass is that q dot going into this control volume is positive. Okay. So, this is q dot, and that q dot results in increase in internal energy. This is mass of the system, okay, mass of all this that you have here, and this is the work done. So, the work done can be written as P into dV dt. Okay. Work done as d cross W is P dV, but pressure is constant. So, the rate of work done is P dV dt. So, this is correct. Now, this q dot, as one of you asked, do we say something about this q dot? Q dot is actually something which will just keep as such in the form of q dot. So, q dot will be part of the system of equations that we develop. We are trying to develop a system of equations with associated initial conditions, so that we can solve the whole system with those initial conditions and get temperature and concentrations and volume as function of time. That is the summary of the problem. Okay. So, there somewhere q dot will appear, and you have to give information on q dot. How can we get information on q dot? From measurements maybe, or maybe you can get an estimate somehow. Maybe you know the heat transfer coefficient outside here, and you use that with the area exposed and things like that. So, there may be some way that you have of estimating q dot. So, we will not be discussing that. Q dot is something which we can handle. Let us say that is the assumption. Q dot can be 0 if we insulate it, but in general we will not set q dot equal to 0. All right. Now, this is energy equation. This is good, but this has a problem in the sense that it does not show you what the temperature is. We want an equation which will have this. Ultimately, we want equations which will have temperature and these concentrations and maybe volume. We can have these things. So, we do not strictly like the fact that this has got internal energy. Okay. We do not like the fact, this is of course first law. So, this is of course correct, but we have to do something to get rid of that internal energy and bring in temperature, correct. So, the other thing that we can, all right, this other thing that we can actually think of doing is we will not use the q dot equal to m du dt. This is small u because m into small u is capital U. Okay. So, this u is specific internal energy, that is after dividing by mass of the system, and this is p dv dt. So, this is from the last page. Now, we will not write u, instead of that we will write h minus pv. Okay. Why do we do that? Because ultimately it is easier to work with enthalpy, because ultimately there is reaction taking place, then there is enthalpy of formation, sensible enthalpy change, all these things will come into the picture, and you have already used the tables, I think, while doing that assignment 1. So, you know that all tables are in fact in terms of enthalpy. Okay. So, it is easier if we change from u to h. So, this du dt is dh dt minus p dv dt. Okay, I think I should have written this as a small v. No, this is small v into m. Okay, that is easier. So, this is so let us write like this, this one. So, you either write capital V or you write small m times you write m times m is the mass times small v here. So, that makes it better. So, du dt is this. So, that means q dot by m is what now? M dh dt minus mp dv dt plus mp dv dt from this line. No, this is just q dot, sorry, this is q dot. So, q dot by m is dh dt. Q dot m by m is dh dt. So, this is better in the sense that it does not have internal energy, it has got enthalpy. Enthalpy is easier to deal with because there are tables. Okay. Still our job is not done. What do we want? We want to bring in temperature. How do you do that?
We take this pressure constant because we are
So, mp dv dt small dv dt, and this is minus here and this plus here, these two.
Upper equation we are taking this pressure constant.
Pressure is constant. So, this is a constant pressure sort of situation. So, what I said few minutes back is that we have a system like this, unless you change the weight on the piston or you fix the piston somehow, the pressure will always be the same. Pressure is decided by this weight and the area. So, weight divided by area is the pressure. Pressure is not going to change. So, this is a constant pressure system. That is why we could write work as p dv dt. See, dw, okay, d cross w is p dv. So, is p dv dt in this case, because we are treating pressure to be constant. Okay, we are treating pressure to be constant, that is why it is dv dt. Otherwise, pressure would have had to be differentiated, but it is not the case, pressure is constant. So, q dot by m is dh dt, and we want to bring in temperature, that is the plan. So, h is summation ni h I bar divided by m. What is ni? Number of moles of the ith species. Why is it h I bar? because it is per mole, it is a molar quantity. So, it is molar enthalpy and this is mass. So, summation Ni Hi bar is in fact capital H, the numerator. So, you can see that this is so that is the situation here, and this is what I just now wrote. So, Q dot by m 1 over m this is from this step, differentiating. So, what should be our plan next? How do you bring in temperature? Yeah. So, we can bring in the fact that this is an ideal gas system. So, this is a gaseous system that we are considering. We will assume this to be an ideal gas system, and then for ideal gas Hi is only a function of temperature. Okay. So, let's go to this again. We can get Q dot, and we can in fact write Q dot by V as summation 1 over V dni dt Hi bar plus summation Ni by V dHi bar dt. Now, what is Hi bar? So, there is a calorific equation of state which tells you that this should be equal to like this. Okay. We wrote the same thing long time back. We said this is absolute or standardized enthalpy. So, enthalpy is again this enthalpy of formation plus a sensible enthalpy change. So, not doing anything different except that we are just writing as a subscript I to remind ourselves that we are talking about a particular species identified as the ith species, a general species. So, coming from here, call it Q dot by V equal to this one we will call an omega dot I, that is the shorthand for this. So, omega dot I Hi bar plus this is summation Xi dHi bar dt. Now, this dHi bar dHi bar dt this can be written ideal gas. So, Hi bar is only a function of temperature, and we are finding dHi bar as a function of dHi bar derivative, Hi bar derivative with respect to time. So, we just break it into a derivative with respect to temperature than the temperature derivative with respect to time. Okay. So, this has done our job. This has given you temperature. We wanted to bring in temperature. That was the purpose. And we have this equation, and in there we can place this for this term, correct? And that will help us write this expression. It just takes 2 minutes for you to verify this. I think you should be able to do it at home. This is easy. Before we leave, and we will stop in half a minute, this tells you that this rate of evolution of temperature depends on this q dot, of course, and it depends on this omega dot I. What is omega dot I? Omega dot I is, we just saw a few minutes back, omega dot I is 1 over V dNI dt, and this of course will have something to do with the reaction rate, correct? Why? Because dNI dt is the rate of change of number of moles of the ith species. So, of course, it will have something to do with the reaction rate. So, this omega dot I has some connection with the reaction rate, and these are species concentration. So, it tells you that the rate of evolution of temperature depends on the reaction rate, depends on the heat loss, and depends also on individual species enthalpies and the concentrations of individual species. Okay, this is not the complete picture. In the next class, we have to derive expression for the species conservation equations. This is just one equation, we need many more. Okay, only then we will close our system of equations. So, we will stop here. Thank you.